A lot of people feel that the Bible is not relevant in today's modern world, that it's just a book about things that happened a very long time ago. But are you aware that biblical prophecy was still being fulfilled in the 20th century? Now, even now, the unfolding world situation is actually the unfolding of biblical prophecy. But we'll worry about that later. Let's get back to the 20th century and understand how it is that despite the illusion created by science, technology and our so-called modern way of thinking, the world you currently live in is actually doing no more and no less than fulfilling the biblical prophecies of 2,000 to 4,000 years ago. Now, if you think our modern society has somehow killed God off, you are mistaken. The world still dances to the Lord's tune. Let's look at a world-changing event that happened around the middle of the 20th century. An event that even now is still the central focus of world affairs. And that is not by chance either, for that also is prophesied. What is so incredible about this event is that it was first generally prophesied around 3,400 years ago, and then again more precisely around 2,600 years ago, and happened exactly on schedule as prophesied. You know by now all the drill about how the Jewish year is 360 days, but our BC and AD dates are based on our modern year of 365 and a quarter days. Now this means, to be accurate, we have to convert between the two using the actual number of days represented. We also know that we have to add a year when going between the BC and AD dates, because there's no year zero and it chucks in an extra year on us. Now, it should also be emphasised that the BC and AD dates are calculated using secular history records. They come from the archives of Babylon, other nations, modern history, etc. But now, let's travel back about 2,600 years to around 594 BC, to a little place called Tel Aviv on the banks of the Chebar in the land of the Chaldeans, or the Babylonians. There lived the Israelite exile Ezekiel, around about the same time as Daniel was in exile in Babylon itself. Now, the Lord got Ezekiel to do a very strange thing. But the Lord often got his prophets to do odd things. It may have seemed strange, but that's the point. It got people's attention, and it got them talking about it, and more importantly, remembering it. It's in a time when there were no newspapers, no TV, no internet, etc. Ezekiel was instructed to build a little model of Jerusalem under siege using stuff he had laying around the house. Then he made Ezekiel lay down, first on one side and then on the other, for a very long time. In fact, for 430 days, each day representing a year of punishment. 390 days on one side for the past sins of Israel, and then 40 more days on the other side for the past sins of Judah, for by that time Israel was a divided nation. So here is Ezekiel, depicting 390 plus 40 years, or 430 years, of punishment against Israel for the past sins. But before we go any further, we have to understand that all of this, and much of Daniel also, relates back to an even earlier prophecy by Moses in Leviticus 26:14 to 46, in which the Lord declares a series of incremental punishments against Israel should they continue their disobedience and rebellion against him. Now each punishment is 7 times greater than the last, until all of Israel itself is destroyed, and the people scattered among the nations of the earth, to languish there until their punishment is over. This total destruction and disbursement happened in 74 AD, by the way, as prophesied by the angel Gabriel to Daniel in Babylon. Now it's important to understand that under this curse of Leviticus 26, the nation of Israel cannot be re-established in the promised land until their punishment is finished. Okay, back to Ezekiel. Now Ezekiel came on the scene part way through one of these curses, the 70-year exile of Israel in Babylon, which began around 606 BC with the first invasion of the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar, and did not end until the decree of Cyrus the Great, which history records as being 70 years later in 536 BC. Sadly, Israel did not repent and continued to rebel, so their punishment was increased sevenfold in every way, including time, in accordance with Leviticus 26. So what does this do to the Lord's punishment of Israel according to Moses and Ezekiel? Well, this siege of Jerusalem began with its capture by Babylon around 606 BC, which means that by 536 BC, the year Cyrus the Great allowed Israel to return to Jerusalem, thus ending its 70-year exile, 360 years of the punishment time remained. But of course Israel had continued to rebel, so punishment was upped by a factor of 7, in accordance with the warnings of Moses in Leviticus 26. Now this includes punishment time, so the 360 years becomes 360 times 7, or 2,520 Jewish years. So we've hit the so what stage. This is the so what. 2,520 Jewish years converts to 2,483.78 of our years. Ready? Now, allowing there's no year 0, we have to add 1 year to our calculations to account for it. So, we have 536 BC, that's the end of the 70 years of exile, plus 2,484.78 years equals the year 1948 AD. We just call it 1948, just after the Second World War. What happened in 1948 AD? That's the exact year the nation of Israel was officially re-established in the Promised Land. Just when Moses and Ezekiel said that the punishment and exile of Israel by the Lord would end, an event the Lord said could not happen until the curses of Leviticus 26 were completed. And nearly 2,600 years later, after Ezekiel, that is exactly what happened in the very year it was scheduled to happen. Now, the chances that Israel would be reformed nearly 2,600 years later, considering they hadn't even been dispersed yet, in the very year that Ezekiel prophesied, are so infinitesimally small as to be effectively non-existent. In other words, fulfillment of Ezekiel's prophecy by sheer coincidence or random accident, or even by human endeavour, is an improbability of such a high order as to be effectively impossible without supernatural intervention. But this supernatural event did not occur in ancient times. It occurred in 1948, in living memory, in the modern world of the 20th century. The modern world is still fulfilling the biblical prophecies the Lord declared 2,000 to 4,000 years ago. The inescapable reality of our modern world is that it is running in accordance with biblical prophecy. Man is not in charge of this world and his future. The Lord has amply demonstrated that He remains in charge of everything, and nothing man can do will prevent the prophecies of the Lord from coming to pass. All of them. Now people ask if the Bible is relevant in today's world. Well, yes, because the Lord has demonstrated that even now, even in this modern, technological, science-obsessed world, He has both the power and authority to direct the affairs of man and the world, and that all that the Lord has declared will come to pass, even in the 20th and 21st centuries. For even now, the next prophecy hovers on our horizon, and for all of man's so-called progress, he is still powerless to stop it.